Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Kelsey. So, we're going to talk about sales operations for B2B SaaS companies and go through what our best practices are. This is the typical lecture we give all of our new clients about how we like to see HubSpot set up to correlate with their sales practices. So, we thought a good place to start would be the structured sales process. And many of our clients are startups, so they're just putting together a sales team. So we wanted to talk about what the vision is and how does it start.
So the main idea for an early stage startup is that what their investors want to see is a scalable, repeatable, effective sales process. And what a lot of times startups do is actually the antithesis of that. They'll get somebody who they think is young and smart who will start just pounding the phones and getting some deals. And that's really what the founders should be doing. And it is perfectly fine if you're just getting started to have somebody just trying to see what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have product market fit, that's not repeatable and scalable. And so it's that inflection point when you're getting ready to actually bring on a team where you need for them to consistently follow an order of operations, sell the product in the same way that ideally is how the product actually works, which will help with your stickiness and retention along the way. And in order to do that, you have to train them all the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the part that where kind of the sales operations component comes in, because the sales process is multi-stages. And so right now we have a client who is getting ready to go what I consider to be really all the way, which is we're making the marketing communications from advertising to website to their lead nurture process be completely consistent with their discovery questions, their sales presentation, and lo and behold, the actual product and what it does. That's the holy grail of what we're trying to do here.
Yep.
So, let's kind of unpack that a little bit. So the first thing is actually getting a lead, right? So the marketing communications matching the core message for who is your ideal customer or prospect, who is your ideal persona, right? There may be multiple of each of those, but that the marketing communication matches what your product actually does and what the sales reps are actually going to say will help you more consistently get leads that are going to be a good fit. Because you're getting leads that are going to be a good fit, they have to be processed. So that's what we kind of believe is, one of the key best practices: process your leads consistently. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail. The lead processing, in short, means determining if they are a fit and a real prospective customer or a possible dealer opportunity, or whether they're unqualified. You want to get to that as soon as possible. If they are qualified, then the process should be very structured in that you can determine whether or not they have moved to the next deal stage by something that the customer has agreed to move forward. Okay. So what happens, so this is one of the aha moments, I think. Your investors want you to have a forecast that is reliable. The founders and the startups that are consistently going to get showered with money are going to be the ones who prove that they can meet the forecast that they've provided their investors. We say we're going to do 30% growth in the next quarter. We do 3% growth in the next quarter. You're not proving that you can consistently meet your numbers. Likewise, if you say we're going to do 30% and we do 80%, well, that might be cool for the investors one time. If you're consistently doing that, they think you're sandbagging and they don't believe you either, right? So the real idea is to actually have a forecast that is as accurate as possible. And the best way to do that is to have a structured sales process where if a person gets to this stage in the sales process, that they are X% likely to become a customer. Like that is how a CRM is structured and a deal stage is structured.
So I've worked with you for a long time. You have a rule that I really like about the rule about what a deal stage is to help people have these good forecasts.
Yeah, so it has to be something that the prospect has agreed to. So if the step is we have a call scheduled, a discovery call scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
That means it has to be scheduled. The other person has to have agreed to have the meeting. That's actually the big differentiator, because if the sales rep is left to their own devices, they're going to be like, yeah, that guy replied back to my email and said, sounds interesting. So now I marked them as a deal. That there is that person who said sounds interesting is no more likely to become a customer than a person who wrote back in their email, dogs are cute, right? They haven't taken a concrete action that is moving them forward. So that's why then the next, so you may say, statistically speaking, out of every time we have a discovery call, 10% of them become customers. Now you're going to mark that stage 1 as discovery call is 10%. That is like money that you could basically take to the bank, right? After hundreds and hundreds of times, 10% of the time, those people became customers. Therefore, when that person accepts that meeting and it's actually scheduled, then we're going to turn that into money. The next step, and these are where this is where art is, it's definitely not a science. Like the sales process should be as many stages as necessary, but as few as possible. You don't want to add granularity if it doesn't actually advance the statistical likelihood of that close. So you need to put the steps in there that are meaningful and actually drive the chances of them closing the deal. So for example, my previous thing was discovery call was scheduled. You could say discovery call scheduled and discovery call complete. Frankly, I'd skip discovery call scheduled because discovery call complete is actually the one that actually moved the needle. That's when you put them in the deal because you discovered in that call that they have your need, budget, time frame, or whatever in the world your criteria might be. So now that's like a pretty legit deal. So then if you said, okay, after the discovery call scheduled, now we're going to have another meeting where we're going to give them the proposal, then I would say that the guideline for when you move that to them might be that it's scheduled, right? Like they have agreed, they have agreed to get a proposal. Or maybe it is proposal sent. Again, this is like depending on the sales process. But if you put it in proposal sent, it means the proposal was sent, right? And so somewhere in between that discovery call and the proposal being sent, you had to have evaluated whether these people are really real, whether they really intend to buy in some kind of reasonable time frame, whether or not your solution is going to work for them. Like, so that's where the art comes in. You got to figure out what steps are going to get there. But by the time they get to proposal sent, you should know out of every N proposals, we get X% of them become customers, and then you can take that to the bank. So if you keep doing that consistently, it's super math.
Yeah. Yep. I have a question for you. At what deal stage do you think sales reps should enter real estimated amounts for their deals?
Well, I think that they ought, given what I just said, there ought to be a dollar amount that is some kind of best guess as soon as they become a deal.
Yeah.
It's not $0. I mean, it may be 0%. You may just say
0% likely, but it's not $0. So that's my favorite sales battle. And I think you've had that too, Kelsey, where they will not admit that they feel like it's bad luck to put dollar amounts on deals.
How else is this math going to pencil, though?
I mean,
this is what I just said, right? Like, so this whole thing is a statistical expected value, right? That you literally ideally would be able to hand to your investors without any other shenanigans. So if it's 0% times 100 grand, it's $0. What's the worry?
So don't worry.
If you then move it to the next stage and you've spoken with them and you've really evaluated it better and it's really only 50 grand, change it. So now it's 20% times 50 grand. Fine. Right? Like, so it's real. Whatever it is, it's real.
And real dates.
Right? Based on your bet. And oh my gosh, yes. And real dates.
Talk about dates.
So a lot of times people in their CRM will set up their close date by using some kind of default. It's 90 days from the deal creation or whatever have you. I don't actually have a problem with that because you need to have some date, but it has to be maintained and it has to be real. Like, what is the actual likelihood of this deal closing? Today is April 2nd. So if there is a deal in there that the close date was March 31st, guess what? Wrong. It was wrong. It is either won or lost 2 days ago, right? It's not close date of 2 days ago because it didn't close. So they should have been evaluating that and said, hey, look, these people haven't moved. I haven't even been able to get a hold of them for 3 weeks. They really ought to be able to make a decision then of whether they should mark this deal as closed lost. They can always resurrect it. It's not actually gone. They can mark a deal as closed lost, or they can push the close date. And either way, that's going to be more accurate because, again, expected value calculation. If you calculate, I should just have whiteboarded this, but
it's
if
okay.
You're calculating, the percentage likelihood of closed times the dollar amounts, and then you're assigning those to the dates on which they're supposed to close. If that's totally wrong, your whole thing is still bogus.
It's nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fake.
Yeah. It's not a real pipeline. And I think you've seen that a couple of times.
Definitely.
All right. So we haven't talked about, there's one thing that comes up in our clients when they start getting volumes with leads, when marketing starts firing on all cylinders. And I personally have had a hard time with this. So I wanted you to talk about the roles AEs and SDRs and what an SDR is for. And that'll kind of get into lead processing best practices. But a lot of our new B2B clients don't understand the SDR role, and we live and die by it.
So this has to do primarily with compensation structures and how sales reps get paid and how that drives their behavior, whether you like it or not. I mean, this is the one that we've seen just dozens of times. So the law of unintended consequences is that if you are paying an account executive for their closed deals, and let's say you're paying them handsomely for their closed deals, Susie can get 20% of everything she closes and she just eats what she kills. She is only going to be focused on the things that are getting close to the finish line. And she will pick and choose among anything she can find that looks and smells like she might be able to win it. Again, this is antithesis of what we want to see, which is a repeatable, consistent process. Susie could be very, very talented, and she could look at some contact in your database, look at their website and think, I can make this work. Now, Susie could absolutely be that talented. And if you could get yourself a pack of Susies, you're going to go to the finish line in no time, but you can't. And so the SDR role kind of helps fill this gap because you can pay an SDR for activities that will help consistently screen for your prospective customers that are going to be a good fit. Where Susie might get lucky and she might be really smart, you might just as easily. We had a client who we definitely heard them say clearly that they were assessing for themselves which leads to work and which ones not to. Right. And they did that. They did that by some clues. Mental math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
had
didn't
some
like
clues.
gmail.com, stuff like that. Yeah.
They didn't like Gmail, so they didn't want to call those. They used Lead Source as a proxy for the quality of this lead, and that is incredibly common, right? And they're not wrong that statistically speaking,
They're
that
not wrong.
someone on somebody that is a paid search ad is lower down the funnel than somebody who downloaded a white paper from a Facebook ad. Like, they're not wrong that statistically those two have two different likelihoods of conversions. But the problem is that there is wheat in the chaff of the people who downloaded white papers from Facebook ad. And if you're consistently just choosing the search ads, you're missing them. Yeah. Right.
And we've had, so marketing, so my big speech here, and this is what gets me fired up, they'll hire us to spend advertising money to generate inbound content leads, which are top of the funnel. And you turn right around and the sales team is like, we don't like that stuff. And you're like, what, could we quit now? We don't want to do this anymore.
And so that's where the SDR role comes in, because you can make their comp structure be, I want you to consistently, in a consistent way, get a hold of these people, determine whether they're a good fit for us or they are, unqualified. And then you can choose what to do with them next, right? So they may be a good fit, but they're not ready. And so those need to be nurtured, and that's completely fine. And that there's a process for that, right? But at least maybe you found the one or two out of 20, right, that was interested in proceeding right now. Like, you found them all 100% of the time. You didn't lose any of them.
Plus, some of the ones that are interested next month or the month after are kind of hiding in that bunch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of my favorite topics. We had another topic about lead processing best practices, and that kind of gets into the SDR role and the AE role. You know, we have a lot of people coming into the website that become leads. How should people be treating these leads? What should they do?
So again, some companies will think they're, so smart and that they can identify which of those are real and which of them are not. And so they'll only call some of them. If there is not so many that you physically cannot handle them all, you should handle them all. And this is a philosophical, right?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'm interrupting you, but if there's so many, you've got to trim the pipe back. You need to close the pipes anyways. You're spending too much money or you're doing something. So anyways.
Or you need to add more sales reps. That's totally fine too. Or you need to add
more sales reps. There's only two ways. So go back to your philosophy. I interrupted you.
Yeah. So my philosophy is, if you have a decent marketing operation where the leads are coming, if you are a B2B SaaS company and you're giving away trips to Disneyland, and that every single person who fills out a form on your website is a homemaker or is a Russian spy, you have a whole different problem. Truly. But if you have leads that are coming and they are downloading white papers on, name your favorite really high-tech topic, those are people who are looking to solve a problem, whether it's now or later. So you should do them the service of reaching out to them and asking them if there's anything that you can do to help. Now, again, some small percentage of them are like, yes, I'm actively looking for a solution right now, and I want to buy what you have yesterday. That is definitely a small number. But like I said, nobody, let's say that I'm researching software for bookkeeping and accounting. Either I have no solution for bookkeeping and accounting right now. I am dissatisfied with my bookkeeping and accounting solution, or I am in the bookkeeping and accounting world and I'm just checking out what's out there. I am incredibly unlikely to be a cashier at Walmart. Like, that's just not what I'm looking at, right? And so I'm in the right market. So whether it's now or later, this person may be valuable to me, and it's worth reaching out to them, establishing ourselves as an expert in bookkeeping and accounting, giving them a positive first impression, hopefully with a little bit of a give, right? Here's some other information you might find valuable. Maybe I can give you a few tips of things that we hear from other customers. And, you're not really looking right now because your solution is working. You're just not that satisfied with it, but you're under contract until next December. No problem. Right? And what's the harm? So the reason that I started out with, companies think they're so smart is they think they can figure out which of these people who were poking around are really buyers and which ones aren't. And now my philosophy is, what is the harm in having reached out to the people who weren't ready? Now, the lucky few have more leads than they have people who can reach out to them. But those are, frankly, already scaling businesses, very possibly ones that are product led. And that's a different story. And I'm totally fine with those people using lead scoring and lots of other tools to prioritize those. But if you're getting, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 leads a day, just call them all.
When Kelsey's talking about, when you're talking about people weeding through leads, I can't remember which client, and I should not name names, but definitely free mail is a sensitive subject for me because they were actually paying us to run LinkedIn advertising and then not calling any Gmail or like .edu email extensions, and LinkedIn advertising is all those types of emails because that's how people sign up on LinkedIn. So that was a situation we ran into where it was just a waste of money to do LinkedIn advertising at all.
Yeah, I mean, and the same is going to be true basically with any of your social media platforms. And now, even now that Google has lead ads, so all these ad platforms, they have what's called lead ads, right? So they're pre-populating the forms from whatever data the person is signed in with. So on your social media accounts and probably your Chrome, it is more likely to be your personal email because that's persistent throughout your life.
Yes.
And so therefore, by definition, that's what's being passed through. So people find themselves with two choices: accept that they're going to get the Gmail addresses, or try to force the person to put in a business email, in which case you're totally,
you're breaking the lead forms.
Yeah, you're breaking the lead forms and you're making your conversion rate go down. So just call them, right? Yeah. Just call them. Or use some of these fancy tools. Like if you have money, there's plenty of fancy tools that will take that Gmail address and look for the related corporate email address. If you got the money, go for that. Fine.
Do you think we should go into lead processing best practices as far as the sequence template and context-sensitive tasks conversations?
Let's just do that briefly. So
let's do it briefly, like touch on it, like things you need to know about, and we'll do a longer session at some point on those.
Yeah. So
things you need to know about.
Because we're, a HubSpot partner, we think HubSpot does this super well, but other tools do
there
this
are other
stuff.
Tools.
Yeah. But basically the idea here is that you're going to have, for the most part, depending on how your team is structured, you're going to have inbound leads and you're going to have prospecting that you're going to be doing, and you're going to be doing, following up on deals, right? So what our philosophy is that you should do each task, as many of those exact same tasks as there are, all at once. So let's just, let's step away from this idea of lead processing for a minute. If I have to wash an apple and then cut it into pieces and then put it in a pie crust, I am not very likely to wash it, chop it, put it in the pie crust, get another apple, wash it, chop it, put it in the pie crust, right? You're going to wash all the apples, then you're going to chop all the apples, then you're going to dump them all in the pie crust. Yes. And so that's how we think that you should do lead processing, right?
Mhm.
So all inbound leads, all of them that downloaded a white paper, or let's say you did a webinar, so you got 100 leads from a webinar. You're going to make a phone call to all 100 of those people. We really recommend phone, even though it's 2021. I know people think, but it's not.
I
crazy,
argue, I hear it all the time. Phone is
right?
dead. I'm like, no, it's not.
It's totally not. So I can tell you based on my voicemails. So I'm going to make 100 phone calls that said, thanks for attending our webinar. If I do 100 of them in a row, especially if I use some of the tools that include things like ringless voicemail drops, these days, those are incredibly good.
Mhm.
I can power through 100 first phone calls super quickly, rather than if I said, okay, this one was a follow-up from a webinar. Now, this one was a deal that I was working on, and now I got to follow up on them about their contract. And then this one over here requested a demo, and I want to see when they want to schedule that. It's like the Apple example. It's kind of
Mhm.
insane to do those out of order when I could do 100 of these at once.
Yeah.
So we like to use the tools to structure the processes so they're context sensitive tasks. Do all of the tasks in one context, then move all of the tasks in the second context, and so on. So we
Yeah.
like to use the tools so you can be incredibly efficient. It magnifies your productivity by like 3x.
I was going to say 3. Yeah. And then the other thing that HubSpot has innately, but there's tons of tools, or natively tons of tools for this as well, is the idea of templates that you can enroll multiple emails into. And Google will limit you to 500 emails a day. We won't go into that. But basically, setting up a series of emails that go out is called a sequence in HubSpot. A template is an email template, and a sales rep can enroll 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in that, and make their prospecting really, really effective. And that's another, those tools are widely available, and sales reps should use them.
Yeah, the best practice there is to make your templates, which, as Rebecca just said, like a collection of templates is a sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Make your templates and your sequence be specific to as fine of a segment as that you can afford to do. This will allow you to have personalized emails that aren't actually personalized. Mm-hmm. So for example, let's say, I always use this example. I used to say people with red hair, but then we had a client with red hair who took offense. So then we moved on to, now I say people with red shoes. So if I have funny. You know who that is? Yeah. So if we have a segment of customers, and I have 1,000 of them, and 100 of them all wear red shoes, I can write a sequence that is all about the benefits of red shoes and how sexy they look and how they match your car, and that you're going to pick them out at the at the front door a lot easier.
Yep.
It can be all about the red shoes, and I don't actually have to write any personalization, and I can send it to 100 people at a time, and they will feel like it is for them.
So in the B2B follow-up, we're very, very rigorous about webinar follow-up, and that's a case where templates and sequences do a great job. Oh, thank you for your interest in our webinar. Here's some other content you might like 2 days later, blah, blah, blah. And it's really great. And sales reps get emails right back from that stuff, but we have to beg them to do it.
Yeah, so. And the big difference, and this is like, there's more content about this on orangemarketing.com, but
we can go on.
But the difference between, in HubSpot's world, a sequence and a marketing email is it might not look that much to the naked eye, but one is sent from an individual sales rep's account from their Gmail or their connected Outlook or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And the other is sent from a email marketing server. And the one that's coming from the sales reps will be delivered to the inbox. The one that is sent from the email marketing server will be delivered many, many times, very often times, to a book folder. So it just, the deliverability, if nothing else, the deliverability will make the difference.
Also a great task for an SDR. So do you have time for a couple more examples of things?
Sure.
Okay. So Kelsey named a club, and it comes from maybe another person, the I Hate Money Club. And these are people who do things because they hate money. And ironically, they're sales reps who are commission based. And so we're always shaking our heads and we don't really understand the I Hate Money Club. But we'll talk about putting people in the I Hate Money Club when they do these things. So we have a couple different examples of them. We already touched on one. We think they're part of the I Hate Money Club when they tell us they will not call anyone.
Right. So they for whatever reason, they think that phone is not going to work. And look, I agree, contact rates are low. I agree that most of the time those voicemails go unanswered, but I disagree that you shouldn't do them for that reason because of the other items that I just mentioned. Your email may not get to them. And if these people were genuinely interested, you want to try to use as many forms of communication as you can. And in today's world, you have a vast variety of choices, but the phone is one that everybody has. Yeah. And so collect their phone number or get it through one of these other tools, many tools available to match an email or even sometimes a name with a phone number. Call it, right? Call it, text it. Right?
See what happens.
What's the worst that happens? Carrier pigeon it, right? So the more ways, this is an old adage. So you may not know this, but Rebecca and I go way back to the dawn of time when direct mail was a thing.
And it was so fun.
And the adage at that time was the more methods of response, the higher the response rate. Mm-hmm. And that is still true in 2021. It is just still true, right? So the more ways that you reach out to people, the more the chances of you getting a response. So think of all of the tools that we really have available at our disposal today. Sales reps have, they have email, they have phone, they have call out text messaging. They have mail. They could write something on a piece of paper and find the person's address and send it to them. They have LinkedIn. They have other social media. They have Twitter. They have all of these other tools at their disposal. And that's just the sales rep that if they wanted to get a hold of this person, they could.
They could. Okay. Another example, we already talked about this, so we don't have to belabor it much anymore, but sales reps who will not call gmail.com email addresses.
They're just insane and they're wrong. And
they're wrong.
That's just all there is to it.
We won't even give it to them. Sometimes we'll give them the phone call thing a little bit because we understand everyone's working from home, blah, 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 but we don't give in on it. The Gmail thing, they're wrong.
So there's two, but there's what we talked about. The main reason, volume wise, why you get Gmail, which is things like social media and pre-population.
You can't stop it. Yeah.
But it is absolutely true that people who work in big corporations, and a lot of these B2B SaaS companies are selling to big corporations, they have spam filters, they have Barracuda, or they have whatever have you.
Designed to stop mail.
Designed to stop it. And so these people, they might be genuinely interested, they might be very interested, but they know they cannot get anything back from you in their corporate email. So they're going to use their Gmail in order to get that content. My friend Kelly works for this huge company called Merkle. I think they're actually owned by somebody even, I think they're owned by somebody even bigger.
Yeah.
She absolutely will tell you she uses her personal email to get real work emails. So anybody who is ignoring this, they're just wrong.
Yep. And on the phone call thing, I hate to even go on and on about that, but if you're asking for phone number on your form, if the person's really interested, they will give you a real phone number. I've done it when I bought a car and the sales, I've filled out a form and I sent it in, and a salesman from Audi called me and said, "We have what you're looking for." I talked to him and then went and bought the car. So come on.
Right.
So if the person really wants what you're selling, they'll answer.
But let me add a caveat.
Yeah.
Make the phone call like real, right?
Okay.
If you're going to make the phone call, have it be somebody who knows a little bit about the business, who can ask an intelligent question, hey, lo and behold, wow, like wild concept, has actually looked at the person's record and figured out what they have done and maybe knows a tiny something about them to be able to be relevant. Otherwise, if you have, your offshore people, the person answers the phone, they start talking without even listening. That's going nowhere too. So don't bother. If that's what you're going to do,
don't do it. Don't offshore your SDR function. Let's see here. One and done. What do you have to say on that topic on the I Hate Money Club?
Oh, so this is the sales rep who says they followed up on that lead and they sent him one email.
One time.
Yeah.
One time. And how many times do you think people should follow up?
Well, so my number is 9 and it's kind of arbitrary, but what they say is, and by they, I mean, all kinds of research studies that have been completed is that it's, somewhere between like 6 and 15.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, 9 is somewhere in between 6 and 15. We have a hard time getting people to do 15, and 9 is actually fairly reasonable. So how I generally define it is 4 emails, 4 phone calls, and a social media like LinkedIn. And make that number be what you will, but take a concerted effort at these people, right? Make a real honest to goodness effort to try to reach them with some variation in what your message is about. Please, pretty please, please stop sending emails like, did you see my message?
Oh,
well,
man.
Yeah, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But if all your email says is, did you see my previous message? And it doesn't tell me what you do or why I might be interested, I'm still going to ignore your second
That's
one.
the stupidest approach.
It's really crazy. It's really crazy. And I must get a dozen of those a day. And it's so much easier to do than that.
And they almost tricked me to responding to say, please don't send emails like this anymore.
Right.
But I don't want to reward the behavior.
Yeah. But if your email says something like, I'm reaching out again because I feel like your situation, something specific to your business could, this is a problem that is common among other people. It looks like you might be trying to solve this problem. I have a way that might help it. Here is some information about that. Hopefully some absolutely free, real, genuine information that could help them.
Yep.
If you're interested in learning more, I'd love to talk to you. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't get very many of those that are truly value added, but the ones that we do are definitely going to be the people who, look how much stuff we look at, Rebecca. Look how many different tools and stuff we're constantly trying to find some other things. So we will look
to make things
cold
easier.
Emails.
Yeah, we will look at cold emails for our business. Of course, we're marketers, so we're weirdos, but and then also we're constantly looking for automation tools because we know this request of 9 contacts is difficult. So Kelsey in particular is always looking to crack the code as how we can kind of personally automate some of this stuff. And so we've got some systems and we use HubSpot a lot to do that.
Can I say one more thing about the 9 emails?
Dear God,
the 9 contacts?
Yes, you may.
The reason there is a number is that there needs to be a finite number. I don't really care what the number is that much, to tell you the truth. It should be more than one. But there should be an end, because at some point, and the reason they say between 6 and 15 is there is diminishing marginal returns. Right. After some number of efforts, you're probably not going to reach the person. So now this is where the stories are amusing. We had a SDR at a client a couple years back now, who, by the way, I totally adored. But his average number of attempts against the contacts was somewhere around 100. He just kept after them. He just, for like several years, he had kept following up on people. And I was absolutely boggled by this. And I asked him why that was. And he said, well, because that one time on like the 75th try, they landed a big deal. Statistically, that is so incredibly unlikely that you're just wasting time. So every time after wherever the diminishing marginal returns for your business is, every attempt after that is wasted. So what we advocate, and this is, we'll talk about this in more detail another time, but what we're advocating is bang your hearts out for that 9 and then pass it back to marketing, and know that marketing is going to do stuff that is going to try to get that person to resurrect their interest. And when they do, and it is very commonly a when, not an if, they're going to give it right back to you.
Right.
So, again, probably a story for another time, but companies should not take those leads away from that rep who's put all of that work in and then give it back to someone else if they can avoid it. If they can avoid it, because then those reps are disincented to give the records back to marketing. They're going to work those diminishing marginal returns, just an off chance that turns into something, instead of putting it back where it belongs.
Yeah, the contact owner has to remain the contact owner, but that is a story for another day. I think we've covered all of our topics, Kelsey. Is there any last thoughts you have on this, or shall I come up with a snappy conclusion?
Well, just that sales and marketing need to work together, and together this can be efficient, effective, and maybe almost fun.